Hey everybody, welcome to my Freesurfer tutorial. This is the first tutorial in a series I'll do on Freesurfer. In this one, I'm just going to talk about installing it and some of the problems that you might encounter when installing Freesurfer on a Mac. Okay, let me share my screen and get started. So first off, you probably want to download it. Go to your Freesurfer site, which is easy to find. Go to the download page, and at this point you need to make some decision about which version that you want to download. And I want to caution you that version 7, although is the latest and is stable according to their notes, it was released only in May of this year. And you might want to consider whether or not your analysis is to be part of an ongoing project with previous versions, such as version 6. And generally, I'd recommend sticking with the same version throughout an entire study's analysis, rather than moving on to a new version, just in case there's some issue with the new version, which makes the results different than in the previous version. Okay, so supposing you've chosen release 7, I think the setup is very similar. Then you go to the downloads and setup. And I'm only going to talk about Mac here. They only release for Linux and Mac. I think some of their tutorials and material might be more geared towards Linux. And that's why I think it's useful for me to go through the Mac setup, as well as that being my preferred operating system. You can choose between a tarball and a package install. I don't think it makes a lot of difference, but I'll only go through the package installer, which is this one. Notice that it's over 4 gig, and that will take a while, at least with my internet speed. Therefore, I've already downloaded this so that we can move right along. So I've got it downloaded, it's here, my package installer. Let's follow along with their instructions for how to do this. So the Mac install and setup page, and here we see that their first instruction is to make sure that you have a working version of Xquartz on your Mac. Xquartz is not installed by default, but it is used by any programs which are X11 based. In other words, there's a graphics library called X11, and an example program that uses X11 is Xclock. It's just a simple clock. So let's try to do that. So here we begin using the terminal. One thing I will say right now is that this is the normal terminal. You can see the name here. And that's what most of you will have installed by default. But personally, I prefer not to use it. I prefer to use iTerm2. It's a little bit more convenient, but it won't make any difference for the purpose of this tutorial. You can use either one, but I will go ahead and use iTerm2. So let's try this Xclock. There we go. So you can see it's loaded the Xclock program, which is reliant on this Xquartz. And if you don't have it, then as they describe below here, you can download it for free easily. You should check the version, as they mention in their instructions. You should have 2.7.11 at least. And I do, so we're all good there. So we can just quit this example program. We don't need to have Xquartz running for all of this. It's just we need to make sure that it works, because programs like Freeview depend upon it. Okay, so next, what we should do is make sure that we have deleted previous Freesurfer on our system, if there was one installed. And on a Mac, this will normally be installed under Applications, but If you're working on a new system where you don't know what's been done before, you might first want to just check if Freesurfer can be found. On mine, it cannot be found. We might want to check if the Freesurfer environment variables are defined. Oops. And so they're not. And now the final check is there a directory under applications? So let's just look. And we don't find a directory. By the way, you can do this with Finder as well. If you look under applications and look for Freesurfer, what you found on my system is a zipped version of Freesurfer 6. That's because my previous version was version 6, and I zipped it up into this zip file so that it will not interfere with my new install. So with Freesurfer 6 and earlier, you could simply delete the folder for Freesurfer. With the new version, you will have to uninstall it with a script, which I'll just briefly talk about later. Okay, so it's not there, so therefore we can go ahead and do the package install. So let's go back to our instructions here. So the first instructions are all about using the tarball method, but we're not doing tarball method. So we'll go to here, and what you'll see with newer versions of macOS is if you've never installed this version before, you'll run into this issue that Mac will not allow you to open the package because of system integrity protection. This is basically a way to ensure that random programs cannot be installed without knowing who the developers are. And unfortunately, Freesurfer developers have not registered with Apple. Therefore, you'll have to take a few extra steps in order to get it installed. In my case, this does not happen because I've already installed this before in testing. But you can read through this. The key point is that when you start opening it up, Apple will try to verify it. It will throw an error saying you can't install it because it's an unidentified developer. Then you have to go to the system preferences, click on the security and privacy, and then you'll see this message under the security and privacy page. So just to show you on my system where this is, you open up this, and this error will come up here after you try to open the Freesurfer package, not before. And you click on open anyway, but that'll require you to open the lock. So notice that you have to enter your password here and open the lock. So we won't bother with that because right now it won't do anything. But that's the procedure. And after that, then you can just go ahead and use the package like normal. So let's do that. Going back to my downloads. Here we are. And this is the license agreement, which you should read through. And we agree. And we install in the default location, which is the applications directory. We have to be administrator to do this. Otherwise, entering my password won't be enough. But since I am an administrator on this system, then I can do this. So this writing of files can be a little bit slow, so I'm just going to pause it here, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, we're back, and it is installed successfully. And if I look in the applications directory, now I can see that there is a folder there. And they give you a few resources here. It's probably a good idea to open up these links and have them available to you. Just do that in case we need them. It also mentions here that If you do need to uninstall, then use this command. So in the future, use this sudo bash applications, etc. In order to uninstall this version of Freesurfer. Finally, they mentioned that Freesurfer is subject to a license, which I think is the same as what they showed you earlier. Yes, so it's just a copy of that page that was shown within the package installer. So we can close this. We can normally move this to trash, but in case I want to redo this demo, then I'll keep it. But you can probably delete it as soon as things are working properly. Okay, so let's go back here. And one thing that I think is worth mentioning at this point is that if we close a terminal and we open a new terminal, you will see this message. Normally, if you have the default shell as being bash, but for new versions of macOS, namely Catalina, the default shell is ZSH. I do not recommend using that shell, at least for now, because many of the scientific programs, such as Freesurfer, expect you to use bash. So do not run this command. Rather, if you are using ZSH, which you can check like this. Okay, so for me, it shows that the shell is bash. But if it's showing ZSH, then I suggest you run this command in order to be able to change the default shell. And you'll find that you'll probably run into fewer problems if you do that, at least with Freesurfer. Okay, so moving right along. We would like to be able to make sure that we can use the Freesurfer easily. And in their instructions here, if we go back to where we were, yes. So we were just finished the package install, and then our next step was to set up the environment with the commands needed. And these are the commands they show. So what they're illustrating is that you can set it up in the terminal and then run Freesurfer. And to do that, you would just copy this into your terminal like this, except with the correct version number. Notice it's the wrong one right now. Like this and so on. But I recommend you don't do it this way, because then you would have to, every time you open a terminal, do this again. And that's very tedious, and you can make a lot of mistakes that way. You would like to have it set up every time you open the terminal. So instead, what I'm going to suggest is that you create these lines in your bash profile. And if you've never, or if your system is new, or no one before you has had to use this program or similar programs, then you won't have a bash profile. And that's the way my system is right now, because I'm simulating a fresh system. So if I go to my home directory, which is where this has to go, it can't go just anywhere, it has to go in the home directory. You have to see whether or not this file is there. Now, normally when I do a listing, I'll probably do it like this with command line, but that does not show hidden files. This is actually a hidden file, and you can see various hidden files starting with a dot this way. And a lot of programs create hidden files or hidden directories in order to store configurations. But the one for the shell is bash profile. And right now that doesn't exist on my system. So I'll create it by doing this. Notice that there's a dot in front here, which may be hard to see when you're watching this video, but trust me, it's there. So you touch to create the file, and then you can edit it with a program called Nano, which is on all the Macs. And then you can copy this and with appropriate edits. So I'm just altering the number that they're listing here because the number is basically specifying the version. And I know that the version right now is 7.1.0, but if you're watching this sometime later when they release new version, then you'll have to modify it again appropriately according to what you downloaded. And we also want to have the subjects directory set up. This is where Freesurfer is putting its output. And we want to source their setup script, which basically does a variety of things which are to make sure that it will run properly. Okay, and notice that it's using the Freesurfer home variable. So if you already have a bash profile, then you would just want to append these 3 lines into it rather than delete the previous bash profile. You would never want to delete an existing bash profile unless you really know what you're doing. Okay. So we want to save. So let's just check that it's there. And yes, the 3 lines we created are there. That's good. Now notice that these changes, this bash profile is not read until we start a new terminal, so let's do that. And now we should be able to find those variables in our environment. So we do have a Freesurfer and we do have a Freesurfer home, and we can also check for the subjects directory. Yes, so it all looks good to me. So next step is to make sure that we can do the next test that they suggest, which is checking that Freeview is available. Yes, it is. Okay. And the next thing we might like to do is to actually load something. So let's go to their subjects directory. Which is where they have sample data. And so we can probably just load directly some sample data here. Okay, so that looks quite nice. It looks like Freeview is working, all is good. And I believe that's all the instructions they have on this page for set up and install, but it actually is missing some important points. So the next thing that you might like to do is try a test which they describe on one of their other web pages. And that test is to convert this sample data into nifty data, which you can do with this Freesurfer command. So this command is actually part of their package. And we can use the same data. And we can, their instructions suggest that you should just do this. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we run into the first common problem that people have, which is that until this point, they didn't realize that they needed a license file. And that license file has to be obtained from their the developer's site. And they don't seem to explain this very well, in my opinion, probably because on their site they don't need it. So let's go to that web page. And this is the registration page. And what you should do is fill in this information, and especially take note of the email. It has to be accurate so that you can get the license from them. And as far as I know, they will automatically email it back to you within a few hours or less. So I've already done that, and I've received this license text file. Let me just show you that. So it's like this. I'm not going to show you mine, but it's basically has my name in it and code for my version, coded for me. And what I have to do is go to my downloads directory, where I have this. So it is there, and copy this into my Freesurfer home directory. So copy license to now. This is another important problem that will come up because it's in the applications now with current macOS Catalina. They're not allowing you to just copy or move things to and from applications without using administrator privileges, which means that I need to use my sudo power, which I just put sudo in front, and then it will ask me for my password, which has to be only for administrator accounts. And then it does work. So let's look at that directory. And what do we see? There's the file. So that looks good to me. So I'm hoping that my previous command works, but I have to be back where I was. So let's see. In my history, I've already done this. So I'm just going to use that. So notice in my history, line 451 is the one I want. So I'm just redoing that. And if I look where I am, yes, lol looks good. So I'm going to run the MRI convert command again. Aha. So this time, the license file is not an issue. So we overcome that obstacle, but now this time we have a write problem. It's not able to write to, and you might think that's because you failed somehow in the installation, but no. The problem is that this example doesn't work in this directory because applications is protected. So instead, just rerun it, putting the output on the desktop, like so. Voila, it works. And so you're good there. But because a lot of the tutorials are based on this subjects directory and you don't want to run into this issue again and again, I strongly suggest that you move the subjects directory out of applications and put it somewhere like desktop where you know that you have permission to read and write freely. So I'll do that. And of course, if we're going to make this change, then we have to change the corresponding variable. So here's the new subjects directory, which is just finishing copying. So if we go back to our bash profile, back to my home directory, and nano bash profile, we now have to change this to reflect the change I just made. And the way I would do this is use the built-in home variable. Okay, so what I've done is just change the subjects directory to this location, and I forgot to put in subjects. There, okay. So I can quit now. And of course I want to kill the terminal and start again. And let's see, that looks reasonable. Let's list it. Yes, so that works. All right, so that's the end of this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. I think that covers most of the little problems you'll find along the way of getting started, and so it'll make your journey into Freesurfer usage a bit easier and set you off on a good start. Thanks for watching. Bye.